South Africa has a massive burden of disease.
We've got no shortage of problems. We've got no shortage of patients.
South Africans are marching to their graves.
If there was no money, no medicine.
Without healthcare human capital, we can't address the healthcare challenges we face as a nation.
We need more scientists. We need more young people to focus on research.
The chasm between the public and private is such a big issue.
There is this general impression that I hate private healthcare.
Lack of trust, mutual suspicions.
I mean, there's been that big gap between public and private sector.
In building a comprehensive healthcare system in a country as complex as South Africa requires all hands on deck.
In this place, even people who are learned, they were few. And now, when it comes to health services, you'll find that someone has to be carried with a wheelbarrow and they walk long distances just to get health services.
Nangam Somalashe grew up in rural Eastern Cape. There are 120 people in a village and the closest clinic is 25 kilometers away.
You know, when we're playing the home thing, you know, I'll be telling my friends that I want to be the doctor, so people come to me, I give them medicine, we take the corn of maize and say, those are our babies, and then they will bring their babies and then I inject them, so I was the one who was always playing the doctor part. It has always been my dream to become a doctor, and it never went. But sometimes I used to suppress it as I was growing up, but it kept on coming back, and especially seeing the needs of people.
For me, it was a simple question. My grandmother died at home.
Kuso won't forget this grandmother's death because Kuso saw everything when the grandmother was gasping, doing anything you saw. I said, no, your grandmother's not breathing. No, we must go and hire the car, we must go and hire the car. I said, it is too late.
It stayed with me, and I was really devastated about the fact that she didn't seek medical attention.
It's a scenario that Kutso Mokhanya, who grew up in rural safer scale, says is not uncommon in communities like this one.
It's very hard to put your life and everything to this person that you don't know. Also the white coat fear and everything, and also being uneducated contributes a lot.
So Kujo always said, I wish I was a doctor, I could help my grandmother.
Determined to turn the tide for people like his grandmother, and in pursuit of a career in medicine, Kutso applied himself to his books.
Primary as well as middle school, where I was getting awards and everything. So in a way, I was like star child.
He's a very nice boy. He doesn't go to the street, always at home, busy on his books.
I always want my children to study hard, not going up and down the street.
Wilhelmina made many sacrifices to provide for her 3 children.
My mother couldn't go and find a job because if my grandmother was around, she would be responsible for taking care of us while my mother is out there working.
So she gave up her job in Johannesburg.
I thought my children will suffer. So if I'm with them, it's like a hen taking all the chickens, you see.
Theirs is one of hundreds of families who rely on grants in a forgotten settlement where access to healthcare remains virtually non-existent.
We've got a clinic here, but even the doctor, there's no doctor. We struggle, even the nurses as well.
In a province with only 2 doctors caring for 10,000 people, families spend up to 80% of their meager incomes on healthcare, most of that on travel.
We have to take the taxi, the bus to Hammanskraal or to Wombats.
It costs 350 to hire a car.
The Northwest Province may be the worst affected, but it's a widespread problem. Across South Africa, the average statistic is 1 doctor per 1,250 patients.
We have currently 8.3% spend of our GDP spent on healthcare, but that 8.3% actually had to take care of 84% of the population. So there can never be enough resources.
This in a country facing a quadruple burden of disease.
In fact, I describe them to people who are not in health as 4 highways through which South Africans are marching to their graves.
We have a colliding epidemic. We have an epidemic of TB and HIV and infectious diseases. We have an epidemic of maternal and child health problems. We have an epidemic of injuries, murder, intimate partner violence, traffic accidents. And we have a very bad epidemic of non-communicable diseases.
And I said the biggest highway is that one in which people with HIV/AIDS and TB are marching.
If I look at the small area that I grew up, and I look at how many funerals we used to have in those days relative to now, clearly you can see the numbers increasing quite substantially.
South Africa is the epitome of HIV, for example, and yet for intellectual generation, we depend on foreign people where the disease is not a problem, do research and come and inform us what to do.
The one idea that I proposed for dealing with the formidable health problems of South Africans and Africans was the idea that we needed to produce a large numbers of PhD-trained health scientists.
The biggest Achilles heel that we have is actually funding. People just can't afford to do full-time research because they have to support their families, they have to survive.
In the beginning, medical science was not a priority for many people.
When you are a clinician and you're having to do a PhD on the side, it can drag on for 5, even 10 years sometimes.
People who become doctors have to pay off their student loans.
And most clinicians I know who haven't had dedicated funding actually don't finish their PhDs.
The challenge is last year, with fundings all put together, I just had enough by the grace of God. Just enough to survive for a year.
A lot of our women who become doctors get married and have children, and so by the time they start thinking about medical research, they're well into their 40s. And so we're very concerned about the lack of PhDs or medical doctors who become PhDs and grow clinical science in South Africa.
When people do research, they do research to answer the problems not only of South Africa, of the public sector, but the problems of the world. I am convinced that if we are to find a solution about HIV and AIDS and TB, it will come from this country.
Director General for Health Malibona Precious Matsoso is equally convinced that another solution to many of South Africa's major healthcare challenges will come from investment in human capital.
It's clear that we need more doctors.
But not only enough doctors in terms of numbers globally, but doctors who are prepared to go and serve the underserved.
My choice was based on the fact that I saw the need for doctors and healthcare services in the little rural area in which I grew up. It was medicine or nothing else because I wanted to do medicine.
Janine Tromp is one of 6 children being raised by her single mother and elderly grandfather in Seerbrak, a small town in the Western Cape.
Sy is die eerste een in Seebrak. Sy het hard geleer om daar te kom. Ek was eintlik bang om te sê ja, my kind, maar ek het gedink dat sy gaan vir dit wat sy wil wees. Ek het maar 'n lening ingegaan.
I know my mother's going to try her utter best to find a way, because I'm the first one in our family to study, and I chose the most expensive degree, the longest degree, and you know, it's hard on me as well, but I really love what I'm studying.
They managed to scrape together the money with a small bursary, a loan and personal sacrifice.
I knew that I could, you know, save money by limiting what I eat.
She survived on bread alone in first year and developed a protein deficiency as a result.
It was a real struggle for me, and you know, seeing all these people around me, you know, just living their lives, it made me sad. You know, sometimes I would go into my room and say, why me, you know? But I'm so glad for being able to be here, because there's people with worse circumstances than what I have, so I appreciate what I also have.
Ek is baie trots op haar, ek is regtig en ek dank die Here daarvoor, want laat hy vir haar so kon gelei het en dat hy haar nog steeds die krag gee.
For many rural students, the decision to study medicine meant taking a massive leap of faith.
It was my first time traveling. I was so determined, I remember that day.
It was just me and Faith coming here.
I was wearing this shirt. I didn't have any clothes to change.
I did not even have money for registering for my studies.
It's a challenge, you know, to come out of such village and to go on to do medicine, where you struggle to even get an application, a non-refundable fee. I did it at UCT. Interestingly, the competition beat me here. But I took it as an opportunity that out of my village, it is possible to have a doctor. The entry requirements to our 8 medical schools in the country obviously disadvantages those whose education is in rural areas.
We were having a lot of challenges.
There are no labs there. There were no labs, and still there are still no labs.
So we are doing a lot of theory in most of the time.
These are children who come from schools where the environment is adverse, and to have got the kind of marks that they got, they must have been really, really bright.
I had a dream in mind. I wanted to achieve it, so I had to work extra hard.
We have got brilliant kids there. I spoke to universities that they need to admit such students, and they told me it's going to be more than an ordinary scholarship, because they need extra attention in terms of extra tutors, extra lessons, extra equipment, etc. And that's where this Public Health Enhancement Fund also came in.
We engaged with the universities and the medical schools and the deans in particular, and we said, well, we can get to a position where we start funding medical students from first year right through to completion. And those students must be historically disadvantaged students that reside presently in rural, semi-rural settings, so that would be compelled to go back and work in those communities.
Stavros Nicolaou is the chairman of the Public Health Enhancement Fund, a groundbreaking public-private initiative which has galvanized 23 companies to breathe new life into South Africa's health services.
I'm absolutely convinced that this challenge in South Africa currently is bigger than the public sector working on its own, and is definitely also bigger than the private sector working on its own.
There is this general impression that I hate private healthcare, whereas I'm actually complaining about certain things that are not good for the healthcare system of the country. Quite a number of times, we used to speak past each other.
We did not hear each other because we were in some areas polarized, antagonizing each other and pointing fingers.
We never, ever found a platform in the past where you can find all the major players within the healthcare industry coming together and ignoring whether they are in pharmaceuticals, whether they are in diagnostics, whether they're in the pharmacy environment, or whether there is government on the other side.
It was complex, There are competing interests, there are very strong views and often very different views. But at the same time, I think the problem that we're trying to address is well known and common. There's no debate about that.
The enemy is the unserved patient. The enemy is the patient who cannot access affordable quality medicines.
We also consider ourselves as citizens of this country, and we also have a responsibility to assist in the advancement and development of healthcare.
It's very critical for us to really have sustainable healthcare systems in South Africa.
I just think it's important that as South Africans, we don't live in islands of comfort. And if you've got too many islands of comfort, it's been shown historically that a country will crumble. So you're really trying to build a country here for your children and your grandchildren.
It wasn't just one lens that was used, the public sector lens only. It was both public and private.
The ability to work together collectively as a private sector, number one, and the ability to work with government, number two, is a crucial aspect to trying to build a comprehensive healthcare system.
Through collaboration, one can move mountains, and I think this is making a positive step towards that.
It's an idea whose time has come. The private sector assisting the public sector.
And if we collaborate in order to grow access to medicines, in fact, everybody's business does better.
The concept was for major players in the health industry to pool 0.75% of net profit after tax for their South African operations into a central fund.
The concept of a fund and pooling that fund and then identifying projects around what that would be applied to, I think was a breakthrough.
And I think having multiple stakeholders from all across the healthcare ecosystem with different expertise and different insights, it actually makes sure that the investments that we're making are having an impact for the entire system, not just for one particular group.
We very much like the idea of collaborating with a number of like-minded South African private companies to work together with government in collaboration to look at addressing their needs.
The process of getting all of the private sector companies to work together was a complicated one, and I suspect that herding cats would have been easier.
By 2012, 22 companies with competing business interests had found common ground, the pursuit of a stronger, sustainable healthcare system for all. They established a social compact forum and its funding arm, the Public Health Enhancement Fund, which is governed by a board constituted of private sector participants.
The things that appealed were, one, the potential projects, two, the fact that the money was very much ring-fenced.
In partnership with government, the fund identified 3 key projects.
Many times we set objectives for ourselves, but it's not tangible. These ones are very meaningful to a lot of people, and the outcomes are quite clear in terms of what we want to achieve.
The 3 areas that we really looked at was bringing more doctors, creating more PhDs and masters. The PhD masters were in HIV, AIDS and TB. And the third area was we put money towards the Leadership Academy to create more public administrators within the hospitals.
The fund recognizes a crisis in management at public hospitals.
It's a criticism that we've had from the time I was in the Department of Health is that there's a bit of disconnect between what people learn and the real challenges of when they are running a hospital facility.
These were concerns that Minister Motsoaledi raised in a meeting with some private sector leaders.
He was going through a report and he was quite caught up in this report. And he eventually flung that report across the table. And he said, no, it's an audit of the skills of our primary and tertiary institution management.
Its findings were sobering.
So right from big institutions like Chris Harney, Benragwanath, right down to the small clinics that are being managed. He said, I'm very uncomfortable with the management capacity we've got. And we then said to our minister, how can we help you?
Help ultimately came in the form of the Public Health Enhancement Fund and its decision to establish an Academy for Leadership in Healthcare committed to strengthening management in public facilities.
I've personally engaged with the hospital CEOs and seen the eagerness that they have for improving their own ability to lead those hospitals in sometimes quite difficult circumstances, and then finding a way to help support them.
The Public Health Enhancement Fund has funded the professional training of over 100 managers and intends establishing a world-class online hub for learning, mentorship, and in the moment, on-the-job support.
It's very exciting, very new in the world actually.
The fund has already made significant strides towards realizing another of the Health Minister's goals.
I said, can we dream about producing 1,000 PhDs in the next 10 years in this field of HIV/AIDS and TB?
A big ask, but the fund, working with the Medical Research Council, has hit the ground running.
All the candidates that submit their application to us are brilliant. And so you're looking for that added spark, that added twinkle in their eye.
It is a big relief. This is one of my motivations, because I always think, haven't I got the funding, I wouldn't be pursuing my PhD still.
Caroline Pule is in her second year of a doctorate, focusing on the physiology of drug-resistant and drug-tolerant tuberculosis strains.
I'm very passionate about saving lives, but I was quite challenged with being a medical doctor because of operations and things like that, and I thought maybe I can do it indirectly.
Biochemistry has always been an interest for me, but also use that interest and the techniques that I learned to make an impact on something significant in the country.
Jasmine Aris is doing her master's in molecular biology in TB research.
The main objective is to try to find mechanisms to shorten drug treatment, because currently tuberculosis drug treatment is very lengthy.
This program started in 2013 and we are now in 2015. We already have at least 55 students in the program in this very short period, and this year we'll probably be taking on another 30.
It's a very successful program. We are happy that we've started seeing the first of graduates who come out of that.
Among them is Tygerberg pulmonologist Dr. Brian Allwood.
You have to just work in clinical medicine for a very short time to realize the huge problems we have, and with any problems also comes a great opportunity.
His doctorate focused on looking at a localized problem, the link between previous TB and the subsequent development of chronic airflow obstruction.
We've got a massive burden of tuberculosis, but what you may not know is that we've got one of the highest incidents of COPD in the world, locally here in the Western Cape. And part of that is probably attributed to previous tuberculosis, which hasn't actually been explored.
They want to come out with something that makes a difference, that changes our beliefs or the way we've done things in the past, and challenges that. And what that really does is it drives our continual review of the healthcare system.
Personally, I want to move into the post-tuberculosis space. So we have 9 million people every year worldwide contract tuberculosis. About between 300,000 and 500,000 in this country get tuberculosis every year. That's 1% of our population. And I want to look at what the long-term effects are, because it's very well known for us clinicians that these patients don't live normal lives after their tuberculosis, or many of them don't.
A dedication to the future of healing earned 6 scholars a place on the podium at a graduation ceremony earlier this year.
What it really was snippets of excerpts from the students themselves, the graduates, their learnings, their experience, how they believe they're making a difference in their research. And it was really inspiring to hear the student stories and to just see their progress.
It's a very rewarding feeling when you know you've invested in a project, and all you really see is photographs of these students, and one day you meet them, disadvantaged students that have come through the ranks now, who have always had a vision, they've always had a dream of being specialists. A lot of them have got a dream of getting into research, and you've given them that chance.
I'm very happy that I'm part of this, and I hope also I will succeed with it.
So my biggest hope for these scholars is that they change the lives of South Africans. My biggest hope is that they get Nobel Prizes.
Research is very, very critical.
Research is the only thing that's going to take this country forward and take the world forward.
If you look at how South Africa performs on the international stage, we're very small numerically, but we punch well above our weight in terms of academic medicine anyway. And I think that also will allow us to further that and actually to answer questions which are so relevant to South Africa.
So I'd very much love the next cure for some difficult disease entity to come out of South Africa because we've bolstered our R&D capabilities.
You cannot improve healthcare system within a developing country without looking at this issue of human resources. It's a very big one.
Using the pooled resources of the now 23 companies, the Public Health Enhancement Fund has made a massive investment into human capital and funds full bursaries for nearly 100 aspirant doctors.
We're funding around 200,000 Rand per medical student. Now that seems like a high number because medical student fees are of the order of around 80,000 Rand or so. But what we do, however, is we fund the tuition fees, raise fees, their textbooks, and there's also subsistence allowance. Because a lot of these kids come from highly impoverished backgrounds. They have nothing.
I always prayed. There was a day when people called me and was like, oh, we're seeing your name on paper there. I was like, no. It can't be me. So I went there to the list and I saw my name. I was so thrilled. The first thing that I did is to call my mother. And I told her, now our praying has been answered.
I was so happy, very happy, even if I could jump, you see.
I'm very much proud, more than the word itself, for the route that he took. Very proud.
Across the country, another medical student called home with unexpected news.
I told my mommy, yes, but I got this bursary, and yeah, she was very overwhelmed as well. I went to the bathroom and I was just crying because I didn't want to let the people see me crying. And so it was a great feeling. Yeah, I can't explain it.
It's a scholarship they desperately hope will be renewed next year.
Die beurs vir volgende jaar waar oopgaan of is dan sal ek bly wees wanneer oopgaan ook nog nie my bonus aan my sak te hou om te wag wanneer daar moet iets betaal word. Dan sal ek vir die eerste keer in 10 jaar wees wat ek my eie bonus vir myself sal hê.
It really changed my life in such a beautiful way, and I really appreciate.
And you can imagine the ripple effect they'll have when they go back and they practice their medicine in all of those communities that are in dire need of having more doctors.
I didn't have any other hope. If there was no money, no medicine. So now when the bursary came to part, I was like, oh, thank you, Lord, that now my dream is going to come true of becoming a doctor.
For the people of rural Qilo, this means the first doctor in the village will be one of their own.
Ndimbona kakuhle umuntu ongogqirha ngoba yonke into izaba mfishane. Kulolo mntana ugqirha ufishane, naselalini ugqirha ufishane. Ndisho sonwabe nabantu belali bokuhlala baza konwaba bugqirha ulapha ufishane.
When the gogos from the village go there and they find that this is a daughter of somebody that they know, or this is son of somebody that they know, it changes the dialogue. Actually, even the way they can talk to the person, it's a different dialogue, which therefore facilitates getting really to the heart of the issue and building the confidence really of our system.
I'll come back. I'll make sure that I educate the people of my community about chronic diseases and how they really need to go to the clinic and test regularly, and so that they are discovered.
Kuzo will be my doctor, and even my family will use Kuzo as our family doctor.
It also meant a hero's welcome for Nangamso at her old high school.
When Nangamso can come back, it will show that even if we are having a lot of challenges as a school, there is a learner like Nangamso who made it
They know that I grew in front of them, nothing special with me. It inspired them because they saw that, okay, it is possible.
If what we achieve at the end is better research around HIV/AIDS, more capabilities and capacities in South Africa, more doctors to treat people in need, then I think it's been really worthwhile.
To actually see the progression and to see that we have enabled somebody to become somebody and to make a difference in society and to make a difference to healthcare in South Africa.
I think to the country as a whole, Phef would have a very positive impact.
And obviously been incredibly successful in the sense that we've been able to attract a cohort of students who really come from poor environments.
And you know, you have to go into those rural areas to fully understand. When you see 300, 400, 500 people just queuing to try and get to see a doctor, and they may or may not get to see them on that day, then it just makes it worthwhile if you can just be a part of people who don't really have an opportunity to influence their own futures, to have some positive benefit.
For one determined young man, the bursary has put him on the path towards what he believes is his destiny.
I've come here as your grandson, to say that I'm proud of the role that you played in my life. I'm here where I am because of you, that your death was not in vain.
A heartfelt message for his grandmother and a final word to the people who've helped shape his future.
I really want to thank them a lot and give them this vote of encouragement to still continue and for them to even extend their hand on other students.
The basis that has been set provides so much hope and possibility to do something actually bigger.
We will deliver and meet the challenges. I feel confident to say that, although that's a bold statement to make. I think we should be saying those kind of things and proud that we can do it.
What you realize when you talk to people across the table is that you aren't as far apart as you thought when you were throwing stones at each other in the press.
I just hope we will find it in ourselves to stay the course, remain on track, because I actually think the possibility is enormous.
When you see people coming through the ranks, they're committed South Africans, they're delivering, and they're going to go out and change the world for our country, that's when I get the most pride.
Can you imagine 1,000 people sitting there under one roof, having got their PhDs in research on HIV, AIDS, and TB, and saying this is what we have created for the country? That's something to marvel at. Or looking at the number of medical students, you say these students here who are now doctors, we have got so many extra doctors who would not have existed if it was not because of this fund. It's something to be very proud of.
Thank you.